You are now listening to the Real Monsters podcast with Nate and Ray.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Real Monsters podcast, episode number 2. I'm Nate.
And as always, I'm Ray.
We want to start off the episode by just saying thank you. I think Ray and I were both really overwhelmed at the reception from the first episode. I got a lot of direct messages and people sharing things about the episode, and it's just really humbling to see how many people are like Ray and I and want to have a podcast that they can listen to where people openly talk about film and the things that they like in the film industry.
And same. I had a chance to talk to several people, even face to face. I had a friend of mine in town that shared with me how much he enjoyed it and how much he enjoyed our chemistry. And it was overwhelming seeing the shares, the follows, the people commenting, messaging me directly. I wasn't sure anybody was going to really be into it or care, not for any reason other than my own personal anxiety, but it was overwhelming, and I can't even begin to describe how thankful I am.
And I know it's probably funny, but Ray, you sent this to me, and I felt the exact same way. There's something about the fact that I use Spotify every day that when I opened up Spotify and saw our podcast there, it was like the same way I felt when I put my first YouTube videos. I'm like, holy shit, like it's here. I can use this thing I use every day, like you said with Google Podcasts. And you're like, holy shit, this thing I use all the time to consume the media I love, I'm there among the people who I listen to normally. And it's just like, it makes you just feel so good when you see that.
Yeah, because I know it took a couple of days extra to get to Google Podcasts, but then when I opened it up on Google Podcasts, even though I had already heard the episode a couple times, I still had to re-listen to it on my platform of choice, because it was almost that sense of reward. Like, it paid off. What we did paid off, and now it's here, and it's out in the world, and it's scary, but it's also really exciting, and so many emotions. It's kind of hard to describe. And I know it kind of sounds a little silly because it's a podcast and there's millions of them, but it's different when your name and your hard work is attached to it. A lot of people maybe don't know this, but just want to give a little quick plug and shout out to my older brother, Jerry. He is the guy that designed the logo for us of the Real Monster. So being able to see my brother's design up in display on all these platforms was also very, very emotional for me. I was overjoyed being able to see his hard work as well, just being displayed for millions of people to see, because I love that logo so much.
I'm obsessed with the logo, and I was so glad when you brought that on, because I always thought when we did the Instagram live streams that it was such a cool logo, and I love the whole concept behind it. And really, like, your brother did really great work on it. It is so awesome, and I love it. And a little sidebar really quick too, for what Ray was talking about, listening to Google Podcasts, I know there are like thousands of podcast platforms out there. Please, if you guys are listening, if you're like on YouTube and you find it inconvenient and you're like, I listen to the podcast on like Deezer or iHeartRadio or something, please just reach out to me and I will try to get it on as many streaming services as possible. I'm still figuring out the kinks on some of them, but I know I can get it out there on more. So if you do have any questions, or if you want it on another streaming service that makes it more convenient for you, just let me know.
And just one little thing I wanted to add about that little real monster creature. So just in an effort to be silly and keeping this thing fun, the real monster is a Lovecraftian style cosmic creature that has come to our Earth to feed on our knowledge of movies so he can take it back to his mothership. He belongs in the Cthulhu mythos, just so everyone's aware.
Do you have like a chant that you've made up for it yet that we can memorize and we can open the episode with that?
Not yet, because I'm worried I'm going to summon something.
Listen, that's like I saw this meme online that it was like when you're practicing Latin at home and accidentally summon a demon.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
So,
we're both going to sit here, and the real monster's going to appear in both of our rooms, and who knows what'll happen from that point.
Hey, there's a reason why when I was doing the live stream, I was unofficially using that He Is Legend song, because the opening lines are, "There's a monster in my room. We discuss movies over coffee."
That's a monster I can get down with.
So
Ray, I have a question for you.
What's up?
I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. How do you feel about this guy named Robert Eggers?
Robert Eggers. That rings a bell. Didn't he do that movie about the witch in the woods and I don't know, something about the witch, something like that?
I think so, yeah. No, if you guys know Ray and I, period, you know we're like both Robert Eggers fanatics. I wanted to bring this up. I know this article is like a few weeks old at this point, but I just wanted a reason to talk Robert Eggers with Ray on the podcast, and I'm sure at some point we'll go deeper into his films. But I don't know if you read this article that he did. I've got it pulled up on the playlist right now. But he was they were asking him about what his next project was going to be. And originally, a lot of people were talking about how he was going to do Nosferatu with Anya Taylor-Joy and Willem Dafoe. And he made a comment that is on hold right now. But they said, well, come on, you got to like give us something. And he says, in quotes, he said, "My wife is really, really sick and tired of Tudor and Stuart music playing in the house," implying that his next film is going to be taking place in like the Elizabethan era. And he said that he has absolutely no desire to make any contemporary films in his career.
I'm very okay with that, actually.
Yes, I think like the thing I love about Eggers' films in general is like not just attention to detail with like the set design and the costumes, but the dialect is always so amazing. I remember when I watched The Witch for the first time, and I was like, the child actors. When you put a child into a role that's a certain age group, you're like, oh, they're going to sound a certain way or they're going to need to act a certain way. These children actors that Eggers gets in his films are so believable, and the way that they can memorize this dialect and inflect it is just unbelievable to me.
I think it was on the live stream that you and I did about a month ago where we actually talked about that scene on The Witch where they're praying over the kid because he's laying down and he's like catatonic. He hasn't woken up from this spell that he's on, and then he kind of gets up and starts chanting this like biblical prayer that's very apocalyptical, and it just sent chills down my spine where I was like, this kid is, maybe 13, 14, and he is giving me like chills all over my body because of how good he is.
I hate when people say that movie isn't scary, because like it takes a lot to scare me, and that movie unsettles me so much and just puts me on the edge of my seat that like every time I watch it I'm just like, oh, I feel like I'm watching something I shouldn't be seeing.
Saw that movie in theaters, and
oh shit, I'm jealous.
And when I actually had to travel like 45 minutes because the closest theater to me they were showing it was like 45 minutes away, and when I walked out of the movies, like oddly enough, when I walked out of the movie theater, it was a gloomy day. It was dark, like overcast. Oddly enough, the parking lot was completely empty. And then the wind is coming through and the leaves are kind of rustling. And all of that was really unnerving after watching that movie.
I can only imagine. And I saw The Lighthouse in the theater. And I just remember like, that was just one of the most enjoyable and fun experiences of my life. Like just watching a movie it conveys so many different tones. Like it's psychologically disturbing and obviously it's very violent, but it's also hilarious. And there's something about the way Eggers includes humor into his films that just fits so perfectly. I feel like even in The Northmen, there were some moments that I felt like humor was included in a way that I was like, yeah, this works. And that brings me around to it. I know we have a really like dense topic we're going to spend a lot of time on today, so I don't want to linger on this too long, but what did you think of The Northmen?
I loved that movie. It's tied for movie of the year so far for me.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once?
Yeah, those two are tied for movie of the year right now for me, absolutely. By the way, Nate did not know that was going to be the second one I was going to say.
I had no clue. So those are my top two of the year as well. And then I actually just watched a film from a first-time director this week called On the Count of Three by Jared Carmichael. And it has Christopher Abbott and the director Jared Carmichael's in it. And it was one of the most beautiful films I've seen in a long time. And I think that's going to push its way up there for one of my favorites of the year. And it's one I hope a lot of people get the opportunity to see. It's like streaming on YouTube now for like $6.99. But oh my God, it was incredible. But no, I'm glad you thought that about the Northmen. I feel like it got a lot of mixed reviews from people, but I felt like it was exactly what I would have expected from a $70 million Robert Eggers movie.
I remember, because I was recommending that movie to a lot of people, and there's people at work and just on Instagram and just outside of this little podcast that were asking me about the Northmen. It's like, what did you think about it? And I would give them my quick Twitter-sized review, and I would tell them it's incredible, you should go watch it. I will, however, say that this movie, it's not that the movie is weird, is that it, much like any Eggers property, it tries to be very accurate to the time. So I'm like, you're going to see some stuff that might make you uncomfortable to the times. And sometimes the times back then were uncomfortable.
Oh, for sure. And what I loved about it, and I got a bit of an experience that was different than other people. My brother I live with, Sam, is a genius when it comes to mythology. It's like his lifeblood. He's so well versed in mythology and knows so much about it that he was in the theater with me, and there were so many little nuances that he would point out about the culture and the religion and like the deep conflicts between the people who worshipped different deities. I feel like there's a lot of people who go into that movie and they're like, what the hell is this? And you just realize that like Eggers is really diving deep into that Norse mythology and to the different pieces that built this culture. And what I love, Ray, is like, I know it was in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, but like I love how neutral Eggers portrays the culture and like the beauty of the religion, but also like the horrible things that they were capable of, like when they burned down that building with all those kids in it, which I know was in like the first 2 seconds of the trailer, but like it really, he does not pull back as far as like this is what these people were capable of doing, and they did it.
I told my brother, because my brother really enjoys his history. He is very, very well versed in history. So we were talking about it, and I told him there's some scenes in that movie that I told him you're probably going to appreciate because those were things that happened. He's not trying to embellish or just add things for shock value. Like, those were things that actually happened, and I commend Eggers for showing us the uncomfortable stuff. You know, even if he'll probably ostracize people, it's still, I feel like he probably thinks that it's his duty to give a proper portrayal of those time periods. I mean, he even used an Icelandic writer to help him write this story for the Northmen.
He's into his historical accuracy, and he's into Willem Dafoe's penis. So that's like his new thing, is like he's like, if I make a movie, Willem Dafoe's penis is going to be in it.
I feel like he's contractually obligated to enjoy Willem Dafoe's lobster, though.
Yeah. My wife sent me this meme. I think I shared it with you, Ray. I can't even remember. But like someone said, what did we learn from the Northmen? Eggers is definitely an ass man. He's not a tits guy. From all of his movies. Yeah. I had to make it light on that one. But no, seriously, like, I'm in your camp, Ray. I think Eggers is a genius. I think he's like our modern day like Bergman or like Kubrick. He's just going to keep putting out incredible movies. And I think for a $70 million project, he did the best that he could. And I'm pretty sure after having that type like level of stress, I imagine he'll probably pull like the Alex Garland now that he released Men with A24. I think he'll probably come back and work with A24, someone smaller scale than Focus Features, just because I know the movie, I don't even think it broke the budget.
No, it didn't even break even.
Yeah, so I can't imagine he'll work on that. But you know, like the production value was obviously really immense for the Northmen, but I felt, in my opinion, I felt like it wasn't much more than like The Lighthouse. It was obviously a larger scale with cast. Cinematography-wise, they were pretty much on par, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Well, and there's I'm trying to think, for the Northmen, I'm sure it was probably they spent more money on the marketing because they marketed the crap out of that movie.
Yeah, they wanted people to go see it, and I was in front of I remember when I was going to the movies at the beginning of the year, it was on it was attached to every movie I watched, so they really wanted people to go see it. I think the problem is because of Eggers' reputation, people are oh, it's an art house film. Getting general audience in there to see it is going to be a little more difficult.
That's right. One of my all-time favorite movies was a giant flop, so I get it.
Yes, there's so many movies I love in my life that have been horrible flops. The Suspiria remake, which I talked about last week, was a terrible flop, and Luca Guadagnino wanted to kind of continue that with all the other... there's Mother Suspiriorum, and there's all these other characters in that film, and he wanted to branch off and do more movies that are centered around that. And I think unless he takes some of his own money or works with other people, there's no way the studio will greenlight it with how bad Suspiria did in the box office.
And that is why I will, even if he makes a bad movie, I will support him. I will always give M. Night Shyamalan my money.
Oh, me too.
Because the man,
I love him.
Even if he makes a bad movie, he made it with... He's actually passionate about it to the point where he'll mortgage his house to make the movie.
I will say, Old had one of my... I had to pause Old because I laughed so hard when the young girl was on the beach and she goes, "Look, Mom, it's my favorite rapper, Mid-Size Sedan." And I was like, did my uncle write this or something? Someone who is so detached from society that's you know what? Mid-Size Sedan sounds like the name of a rapper.
We need a t-shirt. I would wear that t-shirt.
Today's topic, which Ray and I are very excited to talk about. Ray actually recommended doing this topic. We're going to talk about some underrated directors. I think we've each picked 2. And we're going to talk about why we like them and what movies we think that you should watch. And then Ray and I are planning on doing some episodes where we're going to pick a film from these directors and talk about it at length, because we have not discussed prior who we picked. And I'm really excited to hear who Ray picks. So, Ray, if you want to take it away, my man, you can do your first one and then I'll do one and we'll go back and forth.
Well, hopefully we haven't picked the same ones. I don't...
If we did, that would be... insane.
Yeah, I sincerely doubt we picked the same one. So I'm going to start with... I'll start with this one because between both of these directors, this is the one I like the least, but that's not saying much. I still really enjoy... They've only done 2 films, though. That's why I'm going with this one first. And fair warning, both of my picks are not single directors. They're more you know how the Daniels, it's 2 people type of thing?
Yeah, or the Coen brothers.
Or the Coen brothers, yeah. Both of my picks are, I'm going to say, teams rather than a single director.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
And then the first one I picked, they're a team called RKSS.
I've heard of it before, but you're going to have to tell me what movies they've made.
To my knowledge, they've made 2 full-length movies, to my knowledge. They're a French-Canadian team. It's 3 people. And they have made 2 little indie movies. One is called Turbo Kid.
Oh my God, are they the guys that made Summer of '84?
And Summer of '84.
I loved Summer of '84, and I know a lot about Turbo Kid. I know it's super violent and over the top, but I've never seen it. But I really liked Summer of '84 a lot.
I prefer Turbo Kid, so I would highly recommend checking out Turbo Kid, just regardless of what we choose to watch in the next upcoming weeks. You should just watch it regardless. I love that movie so much. I'm going to start with Turbo Kid because you already have some knowledge of '84, so we can segue into that one since you can pitch in more for that movie. But, you have Turbo Kid, which it's basically Mad Max on BMX.
Listen, if you called me on the phone and said, "Nate, I need you to watch this movie. It's Mad Max on BMX," I would be like, I don't need anything else. I'm watching this now.
Well, and that was our episode, everyone. Thank you so much. No, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's this barren wasteland, post-apocalyptic era. And I love the intro because on the intro of Turbo Kid, they talk about how the world is destroyed and the land is desolate. And they talk about all these like crazy things that have happened and how everyone's struggling to survive. And then it's like, this is the year 1998. The movie was released in like 2015 or something like that. So it's just kind of jarring, like, wait, 98? It's not even our future. And yeah, it's basically the main protagonist is this kid who is, his parents were killed off and he's by himself trying to survive based off of living in this barren wasteland. And in the process, he meets this girl named Apple, and they kind of go on a little misadventure together because they're looking for a source of water, because the thing that's happened is that the world is run out of water. So it's just them trying to figure it out. And the movie stars, I'm trying to remember, he was on Scanners, Ironside.
Michael Ironside.
He's in it. He plays the villain, actually.
Oh, that's awesome. See, I'm sold.
Yeah, and it's a very this team, they used a group called Lamados to score their movies. So you probably heard in the summer of '84 a very synth heavy score. Well, same thing with Turbo Kid, very synth heavy score. Death Walls and Mondo put it out on vinyl, both of those movies on vinyl. And yeah, Turbo Kid is incredible. It's gory, but it's not gory to like you almost laugh at the gore. And the whole thing with Turbo Kid is that this kid is obsessed with this comic book character called Turbo Rider, who has this like gauntlet that he can shoot like these laser beams, like power beams out of his gauntlet and just destroy people. But when he shoots them, it's not like, oh, like he killed them. Like, no, you see blood like splatter everywhere and guts flying. It's not a horror movie. It's just really gory.
I actually just pulled up Turbo Kid because I was looking at the cast and everything, and I guess in like late 2020, the producers of the film said there is a sequel written.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so they said they will be making another one. So I will probably watch this week because this looks like something completely catered to all of my interests.
I watch that movie all the time. I went out of my way to find like the fancy special edition Blu-ray because I wanted to watch all of the special features. I am obsessed with Turbo Kid, and it's mainly because of that one. But then when they came out with Summer of '84, I was already hooked from their style on Turbo Kid. And although Summer of '84 is not as gory, not as violent, and not as bonkers, and even though they chose to tackle on the slasher genre, I feel like they gave it their own little twist to it, which I was very excited about. Saw Summer of '84 on VOD when it came out, before Shudder picked it up, because after I watched Turbo Kid, it was one of those things where you're like, what else are these people doing? I want to know. I need everything that they've done in their entire career. And then I realized that was their first movie. So I kept tabs on them until they announced Summer of '84. So I ended up renting it on VOD and just streamed it. Because I rented it on Amazon. And you know how you get 48 hours with Amazon? So I watched it like 3 times. A lot of people complained that it was so formulaic, especially in the world where we have Stranger Things and It and all of these 80s throwback movies. But I feel like Summer of '84 they had the guts to show things that those other properties weren't showing you.
I agree. The thing I love the most about the movie, and that's not to give any spoilers away, but the third act does not pull any punches.
No, not at all.
Gritty and realistic and depressing. And I was glad.
That's something I really liked. Unlike, you have your Stranger Things or your It movies where, yeah, they're gory, they're violent, they're dark, but it always ends on like this really happy note. But Summer of '84 almost leaves you in like a state of paranoia by the end. You're like, oh man, that really messed me up.
Yeah, and it's funny that you said that they made Turbo Kid, and hearing about knowing how violent people say that movie is. And this movie has elements of violence in it, but I feel like for the most part, it's a very like refined character study. And I liked that. I liked the immersive world of it. I like movies that are set in the 80s, but I feel like this is less of like a Stranger Things in the way that it like glorifies the time period of the 80s, and this kind of shows the darker side of living in this era.
Something I loved real quick, this might be a little spoilery. I'll try to keep it as vague as possible. But I love the chemistry of all the kids and their lives, because unlike most 80s movies where parents don't exist, basically, on this one you actually get to see a little bit of their home life, and you get to see why these kids are the way they are. There's a particular kid in there who's played by, I believe his name is Judah Lewis, who eventually went to star in the Christmas Chronicles, if you haven't seen that.
Yeah.
You find out that his life, even though it's told through very small ways, it's kind of a dark, messed up life. But he's also like the punk rock bully kid, so you get to see more of like why these kids are the way they are. They're not just like a caricature of some, stereotypical 80s characters. Like, you get to see why they are the way they are and why they behave and why they click the way they do. And being able to see that was really, I almost enjoyed watching the kids more than I was enjoying the actual mystery of it.
I really like true crime podcasts, and there's a period of time, there's a really specific true crime podcast I like called Crime Junkie, and I was listening to it pretty frequently, and I decided to watch a lot of movies that were centric around true crime, and I watched this at the same time I watched, have you seen Super Dark Times?
No, but that's on my watch list.
Yeah. So it's similar to that. The subject matter isn't 100% the same, but it's still like your 1980s, these kids, and a terrible tragedy happens. And then I watched another film called The Clove Hitch Killer, which if you like Summer of '84, I would highly recommend The Clove Hitch Killer. It's Dylan Mcdermott. Similar subject matter, same time period, but like, I don't know, these films about like serial killers in this era are so fascinating to me, and I thought the atmosphere in Summer of '84 was great, and the score was fantastic from what I remember. It's been a couple years since I've seen it, but I really liked it when I watched it.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, the name of the filmmakers, they go by RKSS, which I believe those are their initials. Summer of '84, Turbo Kid. Love those movies. I prefer Turbo Kid because it's just so much more bonkers and unique, but I love both of them. And the composers are, because they've used the same composers for both films, Les Matos, another French-Canadian like synthwave band. They're incredible as well. So everything that surrounds these filmmakers, they just know how to pick good artistry to surround themselves with. So Nate.
All right, so you ready?
Blow my mind, please.
Okay, so it's difficult for me to pick an order because I love both of these directors quite a bit. But the first director I'm going to talk about is Jim Cummings. Have you ever heard of him before?
I'm going to just go with no. It sounds familiar, but I'd rather just play it as ignorant as I can. No.
Yeah, so Jim Cummings has done 3 films so far. And there's a lot of reasons why I love Jim, but I found out about Jim in film school in my freshman year, and I watched this short film that Jim did called Thunder Road, and it was about a police officer who his mother died, and he's in the funeral chapel, and he's like this really clumsy guy, and he gets up on stage and he gives this like really beautiful, heartfelt speech about his mother's life and talks about how much she loved Bruce Springsteen, and he decides that he wants to perform Thunder Road in front of this audience. He goes to do that, and he's like crying and he's laughing at the same time, and he's like all over the place. His daughter's in the front row and she's like kind of freaking out, and he's having to calm her down. And it was all done in one take.
Oh.
And I was just blown away. I was blown away by it. It was only like 15 minutes long. And so this was in, I want to say like 2017. So in 2018, Jim announced that he was making it into a full-length film. And that the concept of that movie was going to turn into this full-length film about this man who lost his mother. and he's in a relationship with this woman who he was married to, who became addicted to drugs, and he's a cop, and he has taken custody of his daughter partially, and it's about the relationship between him and his daughter and the relationship between him and his partner in the police force, and it is like one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. But aside from that, it's all self-funded. He crowdfunded the entire film on his own, and the production quality of it is incredible for how cheaply made it was. The score is incredible, the performances, which he has been the lead actor in all three of his films, but the performance in that movie is just so incredible, and it's heartbreaking, and it's hilarious, and it is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, and I just absolutely love it. And Ray, if anything comes out of today, you need to watch Thunder Road, because it is amazing.
At it right now as we speak to my watch. Thunder Road?
Yeah, Thunder Road. I actually was lucky enough to score one of the Blu-rays that they released of it. Since then, Jim has made 2 other films. In 2020, he made a film called The Wolf of Snow Hollow. He plays a cop in this small town, and it's like a ski resort town, and he was an alcoholic, and so a lot of the movie deals with him overcoming alcoholism. His dad is the sheriff in the town, and it's actually Robert Forster, and it's his last film before he died. In the film, and it's like a werewolf movie, and it's really engaging and entertaining. I would say of the 3 films that Jim has made, it's my least favorite, but it was still engaging and fun, and it had some cool visual effects. It's a pretty quick runtime, but it came out in 2020, and I feel like because of the way films were marketed in that time, that it didn't get the push that it should have, because, you know, everything was streaming at home, and unless you were in like a big budget studio, you weren't going to get that type of push that a lot of filmmakers were getting.
Remind me of the name again?
It's called The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
That's so interesting, because the premise sounds so much like a movie I watched last year called Werewolves Within.
Werewolves Within was a lot of fun. His most recent film, The Beta Test, which is actually now streaming on Hulu, is really hilarious. He plays this guy who works for like a Hollywood promoting company, and he's engaged to this woman, and he starts getting a letter in the mail, and he pulls this letter out, and it's essentially like, if you meet in this hotel room, you can check mark all these boxes, and this person that meets you in the hotel room will do anything sexually with you that you want. He goes to this hotel room and does this for a while, and then the person just quits showing up. And it's essentially about, it drives him so crazy that he tries to figure out why the hell this happened in the first place, and then it starts invading in his work life. Jim Cummings is the lead character in it again, and it is like one of my favorite performances from a film that was released in 2021. He was so amazing in it. He's over the top and hilarious, but he's also like this really unhinged asshole in the movie. And it's just so engaging. The cinematography in it is incredible. The score was so good. And the third act is so bonkers and over the top that it's just really impressive to me that a person who has been like funding their own films and doing everything like on their own and kind of subverting what we know as the Hollywood like machine that exists, that he literally just does whatever the fuck he wants. And all of his movies have been so uniquely him, and I just cannot recommend enough to watch Jim Cummings movies. He's just such a great guy, and he's so passionate about the industry, and I love all 3 of these films, and I would recommend them to anybody.
I was actually just pulling them up as you were talking about it, and that the wolf one, I've seen that cover before. I've seen that artwork before somewhere. I know I have.
Oh, for sure. It got shared around quite a bit. I know it was streaming on Prime Video for a while. Did you see Halloween Kills?
Yes.
Jim was the cop at the beginning.
Oh, that's why he looked familiar. Right now, when I pulled him up, I'm like, I've seen this guy before.
He is super talented, and he's just a really great guy, and I love his movies dearly. Thunder Road is my favorite in his filmography, but I feel like he's just going to keep making amazing movies, and I would recommend checking all 3 out. I'm very excited to hear your next pick. I like that you picked collaborators. I think that's really cool.
I wanted to bring this one up because I am hoping that these 2 dudes get more recognition now that they have finally gotten their big break. So they are called Moorhead and Benson. They're both directors. One of them is specifically the cinematographer. The other one is the writer. and then they're both directors and producers, and they tend to do a lot of acting in their own movies, but not necessarily all the time. They recently got a chance to work with Disney on a little show called Moon Knight.
They did The Endless and Synchronic, right?
They did, so their filmography is Resolution is the first one, then Spring, then The Endless, and then Synchronic, and then there's one coming out later this year that I don't know the name of it yet because they just announced it, so I haven't memorized the name yet.
Something in the Dirt.
That's the one, yeah. It's coming out later. I am so excited. But Benson and Moorhead, basically something that attracted me to them. So I went through this phase. It's not a phase because I'm still very much into it. One of my favorite subgenres is cosmic horror. Moorhead and Benson, though they don't say it out loud, you can feel like their movies are very cosmic horror driven. There is always some unseen force. There is always some kind of like they create a lot of tension without showing you anything really. The Endless, you don't really see anything throughout the movie. I actually rewatched it in preparation for this, and you never really see an antagonist. You never really see that force that's haunting them, but it's there, and it's very unnerving. So the way it works is The Endless and Resolution, which is their first movie, they're like spiritual companions. Resolution and The Endless happen in the same universe, and it was kind of cool when I watched those back to back because I was reminded of Easter eggs for one movie that tied them to the other ones. You don't have to necessarily see one to see the other, but it was just really cool to see the connections between both of the movies.
That's really awesome. Both of those films have actually been on my list for quite some time.
Spring was their second movie, and it stars, I forget, his name is Lou Taylor Pucci. He was in the Evil Dead remake. Oh, yeah. He plays the best friend, the one that gets beaten to hell half of the movie. He's the lead role on Spring, and basically the premise of Spring is, I was actually joking about this the other day. Spring is a romantic horror movie.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's not a rom-com, it's a rom-horror. I don't know. Basically, this guy has his whole family, his life is just in the dumps, and he makes an impulsive decision to fly to Italy. And when he's in Italy, he meets this woman, and they start dating, and he starts falling in love with her. But, nothing is as it seems with this woman. And he starts finding out you as the viewer start finding out little nuggets about this woman and her life and the things that she does and what she is. And it basically gets very Lovecraftian very quickly. And it's just, it's kind of like it's a kind of a really sweet story, but also really sad. And yeah, like I don't want to say too much. I feel like I'm going to give away too much if I keep talking about it. But yeah, it's this guy. He falls in love with this woman, and they have this really beautiful relationship. But she has her things, and you find out about it. And it's one of those: will love conquer all, or will you get your face eaten alive by some creature? It's really interesting because I feel like romance and horror don't always mix. And they did it very beautifully in this one. And I'm not much of like a romantic guy when it comes to movies, but it was a beautiful romance and also a very unnerving cosmic horror brand of movie.
Sounds like something I would love. I also looked, and I guess the same year that they released Spring, they were in one of the segments of the VHS viral film.
Is the only one I haven't seen of.
I have watched 10 minutes of it, and I had to turn it off because it was so bad. I love the VHS movies, but oh my god, like their segment I didn't see, but the intro to the movie, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And I know they did a segment too in another horror thing, but yeah, I've heard a lot about Spring, and I know you're going to talk about it, but I've heard a lot about The Endless, and those have both been on my list for a long time. I just haven't seen any of them.
Well, so The Endless is their third movie, and like I said, it's kind of interconnected with Resolution. So You don't have to watch them together. You can watch them separately. It doesn't matter which order. It's just fun. They happen in the same universe. So once you're in on one, if you want to be in on it, watch Resolution first and then The Endless. But you don't have to watch the Resolution first to see The Endless and to enjoy it. But The Endless, basically, starring roles are them too. Like both of the directors, they star in them, and they're two brothers that have escaped from what one of them calls a UFO death cult. Everyone talks about escaping these like cultish worlds. So the story is what happens when you've escaped the cult and you come back. The experience of the two brothers returning to this cult and trying to figure out what is going on and why they even left to begin with, and if these cultist people are full of it or if there's really something to what they're saying. And like I said, there's a lot of cosmic horror elements where you don't see what's happening. You don't see the actual threat. It's just kind of all over it, and it feels everywhere the camera points, like you feel like something's going to show up, but nothing really does. But that's kind of the beauty of it. None of these movies I would label as scary, but they're more like suspenseful. You know what I mean? I love
like cosmic horror films. I'm always really interested in like the mixture of like anything like outer space related with horror or like body horror elements that come into play with that kind of stuff. I'm always really into that.
And I feel like these two dudes are really good at walking that line of putting some silly humor. Like there's moments on The Endless where they play two brothers, so they have that brotherly relationship where they are screaming at each other and yelling at each other, but also giving each other crap and, being playful. And they did a really good job with that. So The Endless, it's extremely well done. These guys, you can tell they're low budget movies, but at the same time, they are. I never once was I like, oh, that was cheesy or that was awfully done. It's all really well done.
I know people typically credit The Endless to be their favorite of the two directors' films.
The Endless, I don't know. I don't know if I can pick one. I think The Endless is just because it's the most accessible one, but I would actually argue that Spring is their most accessible one. Resolution is really good, but it's their first film. Script can get a little wonky sometimes and a little out there. I feel like Synchronic was finally their chance at having a better budget because they actually got a little bigger named actors. They got Anthony Mackie from the Winter Soldier and from the Avengers movies. And they got, I forget what his name is, but he was in the 50 Shades of Grey movie.
Jamie Dornan.
Way, much like Robert Pattinson, I feel like that dude has gotten so much crap for 50 Shades of Grey, but he's actually a phenomenal actor.
That's how I felt about Kristen Stewart. She got a whole lot of shit with that, but she's picked so many incredible movies now, and she's just a very incredible actress. People just give them a hard time, but it's like, hey, they're trying to get their foot in the door to get a career.
Yeah, they were able to get both of those actors, which they're a pretty big name at this point. And basically the premise of Synchronic is they are these paramedics and they answer calls to like accidents, and then they keep going to like these bizarre crime scenes. So they're just doing their job, cleaning the crime scene, until one of the characters, his daughter, goes missing. And what they have found is that in every crime scene, they have found this drug called Synchronic. And Anthony Mackie's character starts investigating what is this drug and why all these people everyone that's near this drug is having these really bizarre occurrences happen to them. And by bizarre, I mean like they found someone stabbed with a sword in their apartment, but it's like some, pre-Columbian style sword that you would only find at, a museum. So it's just very bizarre events. And then he starts investigating what this drug is. And the trailer kind of tells you what the drug does. But if people don't have any knowledge of it, I'd rather not tell them what the drug does, because I hadn't seen the trailer when I saw it, so it was kind of cool to find out in real time what that drug is and what it does.
That sounds super interesting.
And that one was more sci-fi than horror. In fact, I would say that it's not really a horror movie at all. It was more sci-fi, but it still included that cosmic, unseen force type of vibe that these guys are known for. And then eventually they went and directed, I believe it was 3 out of the 6 episodes for Disney Plus's Moon Knight.
That's really cool.
And now they're signed up to direct the 2nd season for Loki. So they might blow up here pretty soon, but I really implore everyone listening, just go watch their entire catalog.
You've added a bunch to my list that I'm really excited to watch now.
So yeah, those Benson and Moorhead, please go support them. They are incredible, and they're like the nicest dudes in the world. I've watched so many interviews with them, and they seem like just the most down-to-earth, nice guys that are doing it's just something that they're passionate about.
That's awesome. I love hearing that.
Nathan Brown, it is your turn to blow my mind again.
All right, well, I'm excited. I was really excited to tell you about Jim Cummings, and now the director I'm going to talk about, I'm really excited to discuss his work. I think he's just truly a wonderful human being. And you may have actually seen one of the movies that he's done, Ray, and I hope that you have. Are you familiar with Patrick Bryce?
That sounds so familiar.
Are you familiar with a film franchise called Creep?
Yes, I haven't actually seen Creep, but I am very familiar. It's definitely on my watch list.
The way I found out about Patrick Bryce is I am a huge fan of the brotherly film directing duo, the Duplass brothers, Mark and Jay. And I love Mark Duplass. I think what him and his brother do in the film industry is incredible. They're also similar to Jim Cummings in that they push very heavily for people to work independently and kind of do things on their own. And I've really been inspired by them. They do a lot more production work and acting now. But because of them, I was introduced to Patrick Bryce because Patrick Bryce works with them on a lot of films, and Mark Duplass is actually the lead in Creep. Creep has 2 movies, and to kind of give a little background to it, it's a very simple film. So Patrick Bryce actually stars in Creep, and he plays this guy who is on Craigslist, and he's looking for work, and he gets an advertisement on Craigslist from this guy who says, hey, if you come to my house, I'll pay you this exorbitant amount of money to come film me for like a couple of days. Shows up at the house, he goes and knocks on the door, nobody comes to the door, and he gets back in his car, somebody just jumps and screams at him, and it's Mark Duplass, and he leads him into the house, and the guy's kind of like off put at first. He starts to tell him this story, and he says that he has been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and that he's gonna die, and that he wants him to video record him so that his son, who is about to be born, can have a video of his dad and know what his dad is like. And so, Patrick Bryce's character at first is kind of like, oh, well, this is a little weird, but I'll do it. So he ends up doing it, and the first thing Mark Duplass's character does is he gets butt naked and gets in the bathtub and says that he's going to show his son what bath time is like. And things just kind of get weirder from there. I don't want to dive too much into it for people that haven't seen it. I actually did a review of Creep 1 and 2, and I'm not going to really talk about Creep 2 separately because it's a continuation of the story. It is like one of the most bizarre and hilarious and just off-putting things I've watched. And it's found footage shot, so it's shot relatively cheap, but it is so engaging and performance driven. And Mark Duplass gives like one of my favorite roles in a movie in that film, and it is so incredible. And Ray, knowing the kind of stuff that you like, both of them are streaming. They've been streaming on Netflix for a really long time. I think you will really love it.
That's the one with the guy wearing like the wolf head, right? On some shots.
Yes. Peach Fuzz. He calls the mask Peach Fuzz. It is an absolutely wild couple of films. I immediately fell in love with Patrick Bryce's filming style after that. Just because, I like found footage horror films, and it was such a unique spin on the found footage genre. And the second one is, I personally think the second one is even better than the first. It plays even heavier into the comedy element of it, but it still balances it with that horror really well. That actually leads to his next film, which is a film that I don't know if you've heard of, but it's called The Overnight.
That sounds familiar too, but no.
Yeah, so The Overnight stars Adam Scott from Parks and Recreation, and it has Jason Schwartzman,
Oh, yeah. I've seen this movie.
Yeah, so you know how wild this movie is.
That movie is so bonkers.
Yes.
I remember watching that movie because I was just coming off the high of Parks and Rec. So I was just like, I love Adam Scott. Ben Wyatt is my favorite character of Parks and Rec. So I'm like, I need to just digest everything. So the first thing I watched after Parks and Rec was what? The Overnight.
And you're like, wow, this was bizarre.
Yeah, that movie was so weird.
Do you know what, though? The thing I love about it is weird, and it's, like, uncomfortable, but it's also a really beautiful story about, like, finding yourself and understanding who you are as a person. And that's what I love so much about it, because Patrick Bryce builds it up almost as if it's going to be like a horror film. You have Adam Scott and his wife, played by Taylor Schilling, who was in Orange is the New Black, and they move into town with their son, and they're at a park together, and that's where they run into Jason Schwartzman, and he like invites them over for their kids to hang out together. And so they come over for this dinner, and they start hanging out, and it's like they start hitting on them, and it like becomes this thing where they're like trying to guess whether or not they're swingers or what's going on. And it plays into like a lot of comedy. Like, I even love the poster and what that alludes to into the movie. It always makes me laugh. But the third act turns into this scene where you start to understand things from Jason Schwartzman and his wife's perspective, and like where his head's been at, and like him and his own journey of discovering who he is as a person. And it turns into this like really beautiful narrative about understanding yourself and like trying to figure out who you are. And I really loved it. I know it's like super weird and it's uncomfortable for some people, and the subject matter is really crazy, but I really liked it. And I thought that it was cool to see Patrick Bryce do that film after Creep and just kind of see differentiation in the stuff that he was capable of making. And so then after The Overnight is when he made Creep 2. And then after Creep 2, he made a film called Corporate Animals, which is the only film in his catalog that I haven't seen. And it has Demi Moore and Ed Helms are the two leads in it. And I think it's about these people that go to like a work retreat, and they end up getting stuck there, and I'm pretty sure they start eating each other.
So there's that.
It was on Shudder recently, and I still haven't watched it, and I'm not sure if it's there yet. But that's the only thing I haven't watched of his. And then he worked on a TV show. Have you heard of this TV show, Ray? It's called Room 104.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so it's really cool. It's him and the Duplass brothers actually came up with the premise for the show. And what it is they set the restrictions for themselves that they could only film this TV show in one space. And that the actors could be directly outside of the hotel room or in the hotel room, but it has to be in the space. And it's almost like the Twilight Zone in a hotel room. And so Patrick Bryce has directed 6 episodes of that. It's a really beautiful show. It's funny. It's got a lot of over-the-top moments. And then that leads into his final film that he's made, which you've probably seen the poster for if you have Netflix, Ray. And it's called There's Someone Inside Your House.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. I'm going to look it up because that does sound familiar.
Yeah, so it was a Netflix exclusive film, and it's about this group of kids at a high school who have been targeted by a masked serial killer, and they start getting killed off one by one.
Pulling it up right now. Yeah, I have seen that poster, yeah.
It's like a Scream-esque satire of slasher for like the Me Too era, which made it really interesting because like the way they incorporate into why these people are being murdered off made it such a fascinating and unique story. And it was like a lot of people gave it crap because of the quote-unquote wokeness element of it, but I thought it was so well integrated into the story and made it funnier. I mean, there's so many great moments. The cast was really great. There was a lot of young actors and actresses in it. Sydney Park, who played McConaughey, who's the lead character, was fantastic. She was probably my favorite part of the movie, but most of the actors and actresses in it are people who hadn't been in much before. But I was so excited to see Patrick Bryce do something and get like wide released on Netflix. And it's such like a fun and entertaining movie. And I know how much you love the horror genre, Ray. It's just like a fun slasher that pays homage to like that Wes Craven era, those horror movies that are like pushing the boundaries of comedy and horror. And when these kills happen in the movie, they don't pull back from it. They're very violent and brutal kills. So that's Patrick Bryce's filmography. I think he's a really great guy who's very much about supporting people in the independent film community. And as you can tell, that's a theme for me, being someone who went to film school and someone who wants to make this type of content. I really want to promote filmmakers who care about other filmmakers. And so Patrick Bryce, I would check out all of his films. He's made some really great ones.
So fascinating that he has such a diverse filmography, from Creep to The Overnight. It's very diverse. I feel like a lot of directors, once they get into their niche, they're very much like, you can expect something out of Villeneuve or from Christopher Nolan. You almost anticipate certain things from people like them or your Wes Andersons. But when you have directors like that, where for all you know, his next movie could be a rom-com.
Exactly, and I love when filmmakers do that. So my picks for directors were Jim Cummings and Patrick Bryce. You can find most of Jim Cummings' work on Hulu and Prime Video. And you can find Patrick Bryce's stuff is normally on Netflix. I know that his newest film, There's Someone Inside Your House, is on there, and both the Creep films were streaming on there, and the rest of them should be available on Prime Video.
And then for my picks, I picked RKSS. So Turbo Kid, I believe Turbo Kid, it looks like it's free to stream on Peacock. And then is Summer of '84 still on Shudder?
No, they pulled it recently. I haven't seen it on there in a while.
Bummer. So that might be a VOD type movie. For Moorhead and Benson, I'm looking them up as we speak. Resolution is on free to watch on Tubi. Spring is also free on Tubi. The Endless, last time I checked, it was on Netflix, but it could be down by now. And then Synchronic is on Netflix as well. And then Moon Knight is on Disney Plus.
Awesome. So check out those filmmakers on those streaming services. All right, guys. So that was the topic for the day. Ray, I thought you had some really good picks. I think it's cool doing this podcast with you. Constantly like pushes me to watch things that have either been on my watch list or that I've never heard of. And it's awesome because like this gets me excited to watch some other stuff.
Same. Well, there was a lot that you mentioned that I'm like, I've heard of that. I've seen that. I've been, recommended that, but I never actually took the time to watch them. So now it's not that I'm obligated to, but now I have a motivation. That's the proper word, a motivation to do it.
This is the part of the show that Ray and I love, which is that we're going to answer questions from people. And we highly recommend that you head over to @TheRealMonsters Podcast on Instagram and just leave us a comment on one of the posts that we put on some questions about film that you have for us. Or you can hit up Ray at Analog C or me at My Exit Unfair and just leave comments for us. And we want to answer you guys' questions. So the first question today is going to be, what's an underrated horror film that you think more people should know about? Ray, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so for me, I thought about it. I had a bunch come to mind. I feel like we've mentioned a handful already, but this one keeps coming to mind for some reason because for a studio that's so big and so popular, yet not a lot of people have seen The Monster, which is an A24 movie.
That's that has Zoe Kazan, right? I really like her.
I believe so. And the movie, it's on the surface, it's pretty formulaic. This mom and daughter get stranded in the middle of the woods. Their car just breaks down in the middle of a drive that they're doing. They have kind of a tumultuous relationship, and there literally is a monster in the woods trying to kill them. So on the surface, you think, oh, this is a very basic horror movie, but under the surface, as you get to know the mom and the daughter and the relationship that they have and how this monster probably symbolizes more under the surface than meets the eye. Like, you see this monster and you see this creature, and again, it's an A24 movie, so you know that there's going to be more than just a straightforward horror movie. There's got to be some form of under the surface lesson here. And in my personal opinion, it's one of the best horror movies to depict addiction, the mother and daughter relationship, as you learn more about them throughout the movie. Because the whole thing happens in like that little square radius of the car. Because they don't have very many places to hide. They'll hide in the car, they'll hide under the car, they'll hide in between the trees. But it's very constrained, so you get to see more segments of their life as a mother and daughter and all the issues that they've been dealing with. And yeah, and you get to see a little bit of the demons that they face each day. And I feel like a lot of that is told through this haunting happening in the woods. And you get to, I don't know. I don't want to say more because it's going to get into spoilers. But I feel like it's super underrated because even though it's by A24, which is a studio that everyone knows now, it's not, no one talks about that movie, which it's not the most unique movie in the world, but it's also really good and not enough people talk about it. I bought it on a whim in like a $5 bin and I'm so happy I did.
It's actually directed by a director I really like named Brian Bertino, who made a film that you may have heard of, Ray, called The Strangers. He also wrote The Strangers. He made a film in 2020 that I absolutely adored called The Dark and the Wicked. That was phenomenal.
I had no... Yeah, and I've heard of The Strangers a lot, but no one talks about the monster. What about you, Nate?
Calling this an underrated film might be wrong. I don't really know, but I want a platform to gush about this film, and the film I want to gush about is Psycho Gore Man. Have you seen Psycho Gore Man, Ray?
I most definitely have, and it's not over. And the kids are wrong. You gush about it all day long, please.
Okay, because I'm going to tell you right now, Psycho Gore Man might not be just like one of my favorite horror movies. It might just be like one of my favorite movies ever made. I could watch Psycho Gore Man on repeat like 100 times over and over and over again, and I would never get sick of it. So for those of you out there who don't know, Psycho Gore Man is about these two little kids who, the little girl in this movie, I had to look her up. Her name is Nita Josie Hannah, who plays Mimi, is like one of the funniest, most over-the-top characters I've ever seen in a movie. And her brother are outside playing, and they find this like gem that summons Psycho Gore Man, or PG for short. He is a like demon god essentially, who like is all about destroying worlds. And they find out that when they get into possession of this gem, that they can control his every whim and he can't do anything on his own. And it is just like one of the funniest, most over-the-top, gory movies I've ever seen. And one of my favorite characters, and Ray, I hope you agree, is the dad. I love the dad in this movie so much. I can't even begin to tell you. Like, this movie, my wife and I watched this on a whim, and I think we both laughed so hard. Like, and my wife looked at me and she's like, Nate, this is my new comfort movie. Like, I love this movie so much, and I just want to watch it all the time. And yeah, I really love it. And it's directed by this guy named Steven Kustansky. And I feel like Psycho Gore Man, people know it. If you like have a Shudder subscription, people saw it. But I feel like what people really know Steven Kustansky for is a film called The Void.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, and people really like The Void and talk about it a lot. And he also did a segment in the new VHS 94 movie. And he also directed, Sci-Fi did the TV series of Day of the Dead. And he directed like 5 episodes of that.
I was actually just going to bring up The Void because I love The Void. As I mentioned earlier, I love cosmic horror. So I'm so glad you brought up Psycho Gore Man because I love The Void. I love Psycho Gore Man.
I'm down with talking about The Void on an episode because I've never seen it, and I've heard a lot of people say Carpenter-esque when they refer to that movie. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like all over seeing it because I've heard that the visuals are amazing.
So my experience with Psycho Gore Man was really funny because, so for those of you who don't know, I'm a big film score guy. I really love my film scores, and Waxwork Records put out the score for Psycho Gore Man.
I hope it's available because I have never bought it and I need to own it.
I remember seeing the Waxwork, and then I remember seeing the cover thinking to myself, what the hell is this? And then I saw that the score was done by Blitz and Berlin, which are the same people that scored The Void. And I love the score for The Void, so I'm like, ooh, I want to check this out. So I checked it out, and I ordered the score without having even seen the movie, just because I thought it was such a fun synth-driven score, and then you have that song, Freak Out.
Yes!
Like, this is incredible. So I actually ordered the score first, and then thought to myself, I love the score. I can't imagine the movie being bad. So I checked it out, and yeah.
And little did you know, the movie was not bad. It was amazing.
It was really good. Like, I was gonna expect it was definitely like a B movie, but it was like a good B movie.
I have to tell you, when they had that mangled up police officer who kept shooting the gun off, I was literally keeled over on my couch, like crying. I had to pause the movie because it was making me laugh so hard.
That movie. That movie's great. If people haven't seen it, they need to repent of their ways.
It's just so funny, and I like how it's like guised as this like Power Rangers-esque looking thing, and it's so gory and brutal. So gory and brutal brings us to our next question, Ray, which is, what is your favorite Disney and Disney Pixar movie?
Okay, so I have one for each. I have more thoughts about one than the other. My favorite Disney movie is, plain and simple, The Emperor's New Groove.
Oh, hell yeah. What a great pick.
It's my favorite Disney movie. Why? Because I like it. That's why.
You don't need another answer to that. And Kronk is the best. What are we talking about? Kronk is the best.
Which, by the way, every time I see Patrick Warburton, that's all I see. Did you ever watch, just on a quick side note, did you ever watch the movie Better Watch Out? The comedy horror Christmas movie?
I loved that movie and was so glad that it had the subversion of the expectations at the end. I had no idea it was going to go that route.
But not to get too into it, but because Patrick Warburton plays the like scummy dad at first, I was like, but that's Kronk. Kronk doesn't do that.
That's so good.
That is my favorite Disney movie.
Yeah, so my favorite Disney movie, and I credit this to my wife specifically, is Tangled.
Oh.
My wife fell in love with that movie when we saw it in the theater when we were first dating. And I watched that, and I absolutely fell in love with the music. And I think that the visuals are incredible. I love the story, and we actually rewatched it recently. And I just loved it even more. And I would say next to that, a close second would be Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch is like a personal favorite of mine. But like, if I'm being honest with myself, my favorite is probably Tangled. So I got to know the Pixar one, Ray, because I got to see. I did a YouTube series a while ago where I actually ranked every Disney Pixar movie, which you can imagine how long that took. I ranked all of them. It took me forever. So I know I have a clear favorite, but I can't wait to hear yours.
I have a clear favorite, and people have asked me all the time, and this movie, I knew it was my favorite Pixar movie the moment the credits roll in the theaters.
I can't wait. What is it?
Credits rolled, and I was just, this will forever be my favorite Pixar movie. I jokingly call it 2001: A Space Odyssey for Dummies because it's WALL-E.
WALL-E! Yes! WALL-E is my number 3.
Wow.
Very, very, very high up there, but WALL-E is my number 3. I actually went to the theater with my family to watch that movie, and I had absolutely zero interest in seeing it when it first came out. I thought the trailer looked awful, and I went in and saw the movie and like was in tears by the end of it and just thought it was like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
So for those that don't know me very well, I have a thing. There are certain tropes that you put it in any movie, I'm there. And one of them is sentient robots. You put a sentient robot in a movie, and I'm basically putty.
Ray, I have a WALL-E Christmas ornament that I will purposely play the sound bite on it over and over again that just says WALL-E, just him say his voice. And I permanently in my brain have cemented "Put on your Sunday clothes" at the beginning.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite openings to any Disney film.
I love that movie so much. And yeah, I call it 2001: A Space Odyssey for Dummies as a joke.
My wife always asks me when we're going to get to the point in society that we're going to be floating on those chairs.
I don't think I'm gonna. I think my butt is not made for those suits. I don't have the butt for those suits.
Oh my god! But no, I agree with you. I love that film, and it means the world to me. And it's one of those. I would say it. I said it's in my number 3. My top 3 Pixar films are so difficult because I feel like at any moment they could change to number 1. But that is WALL-E is one that like I could watch it a million times and I'd never get tired.
I love WALL-E so much, and to this day, it's. I have yet to watch a movie from Pixar that I like more than WALL-E, and I'm hopeful that right now that Mondo has been pressing all these Pixar soundtracks, I'm hopeful that WALL-E will finally have its shot at being available on vinyl. But I just love Wally. I love the message too. I love how much emotion they show with very little dialogue, especially from these two robots. I don't have a single bad thing to say about Wally.
It's a perfect film. I don't have any issues. It is 100% a perfect film.
It, of course, answered one of humanity's long questions. Yes, cockroaches will outlive us all.
Yes, 100%. No, I love Wall-E, and I think it's a beautiful movie. And that actually segues because you were talking about Mondo. So, Mondo recently pressed my favorite Pixar film on vinyl.
Ah, okay.
So, my second favorite Pixar film is Ratatouille, which also has a beautiful Mondo pressing, and I have that.
Personally, I prefer Ratatouille.
Yes, Ratatouille! And my favorite Pixar movie is Up.
Oh, I missed on that pressing, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I got a hold of a copy, and Michael Giacchino's score is like amazing. But I'm gonna get a little sappy, Ray, and I'm sorry. But the reason why I love this movie so much, I saw this movie when it was released in 2009, probably like 7 months after my grandfather died, and I took my grandmother to see this movie with me. And that opening scene happened, and she was literally a complete and total wreck at the end of it.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's a brutal opening.
And we finished that movie, and she looked at me and said, "That is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen in my life." And I watched that movie, and the entire time, Carl's character reminded me of my grandfather while I watched it. And I truly think that it is Pixar's best as far as juggling the subject matter that kids can comprehend while also tackling like really heavy subject matter that adults have to deal with, which is when you lose a loved one. Like, life goes on, unfortunately. I mean, you don't want to live without those people in your life, but you have to continue on and you have to press on. And seeing Carl's character kind of shape his priorities and move from like being this bitter old man who's lost his wife and living in this house in an area he can't stand to going on an adventure with this kid and this dog, and like shifting his priorities to where these new people in his life become his family. And I just have always thought that it is the most beautiful thing, and it always, like, I cry every time I watch that movie. I can't even turn it on without turning into just like a puddle. But yeah, it's definitely my favorite Pixar movie. I don't think anything else can overcome that, but Ratatouille's pretty damn close.
Up was such a beautiful movie for sure, and Pixar has always been really good about telling these really adult-themed stories through the lens of like a children's film, and I've always appreciated that in movies like Up or, you know, Ratatouille or Wall-E.
Toy Story. Toy
Story. You know, that talk about an existential crisis after the end of Toy Story 3.
I thought you were going to say Cars 3.
Wow.
What? Hey, wow. Yeah. Listen,
Ka-chow.
Cars 1 starred Academy Award winner Paul Newman.
Up is incredible, though, and I do deeply regret not picking that up on vinyl when it came out.
I really have a lot of fun talking with you, Ray, and I think that this podcast is just going to continue to grow, and I look forward to doing many, many, many more episodes with you. And what we're planning on doing for next week's episode, because we thought it would be fun, is we're each going to pick one film from one of the directors we talked about today. We're going to watch them, and we're going to talk about them in great detail. So the film I am going to pick is from Jim Cummings, and we're both going to watch, I'm going to rewatch for like the 15th time, Thunder Road.
And for me, I picked the RKSS bonkers Turbo Kid for Nate to enjoy. And I'm going to rewatch it too, even though I just watched it last night. I'll rewatch it again.
So we're going to have one really grounded familial comedy drama and one over-the-top violent fun film. It'll be a really great and unique episode.
And also, just to give everyone a fair warning, we invite you guys to also watch it because we'll probably get into spoilers for that episode.
And that's the big reason why we announced we're going to try with these episodes whenever we do movie specifics to give you guys a heads up so you can watch it. So like I said, Thunder Road is streaming on Amazon. I think you can like rent it on YouTube and all that for pretty cheap. And Ray, where did you say that Turbo Kid was streaming?
Turbo Kid should be free on Peacock, so you don't even have to sign up for a trial or anything. I think you can just download the app and watch it for free.
Yeah, so watch these movies, and we look forward to the next episode. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at The Real Monsters Podcast, and you can follow me at My Exit Unfair and Ray over at Analog C. And we've got a lot of fun content that we're going to be putting out weekly for you guys, and I look forward to it. And then as long as Ray doesn't care, I'm going to shamelessly plug my YouTube channel at Nate's Film Reviews, where if you're not sick of me after listening to me talk to Ray for an hour, you can go listen to me talk for 7 to 10 minutes about a new movie or something I think's cool.
And then just my page is predominantly I post vinyl records, so you don't have to hear my voice or see my face. So win-win, right?
He has really excellent taste in music and soundtrack scores, and he really posts a lot of great content, and I would highly recommend following him. I post albums too, but my taste is not nearly as eclectic.
That is a flat out lie. You know it. We're basically the same person when it comes to music.
Yes.
And just one more thing I want to add before we let you guys go. We'll try to throw stuff up on our Instagram page. We're still trying to manage that a little bit better, but yeah, hit us up, send us comments, send us DMs. If you have questions, suggestions, and if we don't feature your question or suggestion right away, please know that it is going to be put on a backlog, so don't feel like we're not going to get to it. We're just trying to be time conscious so we can get to every question that we would like. So yeah, be on the lookout. I'll post some reminders on our socials for the movies that we're going to be talking about, so hopefully you all can join and, be, in a way, part of the conversation via comments or messages.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening, guys, and we look forward to episode 3.
See ya.